Thank you very much for your introduction. And I'm super excited to be here today. My name is Lena Kordbacheh. I'm Strategic Partnership Lead at Luna Labs. Actually, this is my first time presenting at digital events. Something new for me, and I hope there are people here who would like to learn more about playable ads. My presentation is about what to think of while building playables. Everything I say here today, I try to simplify. Uh, Otherwise, this presentation might take hours to complete, and I can talk literally for hours about playables. As we know, today, many creative teams are faced with a challenge. Playable ads, or playables, how we call it, have quickly risen to the front line of any mobile game studios and their creative strategy. And yet, the answer to the question, what makes a good playable, remains somehow and somewhere unknown. Yes, delivering a successful playable ad requires a high level of creative knowledge, but also involves concept testing and actual deep analysis of each creative set. But if your team would like to recognize the potential of playable ad format, there is basic need to understand, first of all, how users typically engage with your creatives and carefully plan around their interaction. I would start to tell you a little bit about Luna. Luna was created in 2018. It was just 15 people, and today we are full 45, and we are growing. And yes, we are recently acquired by Iron Source. At Luna Labs, we build tools to literally empower a creative team to control their end-to-end creative processes, basically working closely with our partners. We've been able to see what actually takes to create a successful playable ad. And to help you, we have distilled these insights into several best practices that you can actually adopt and implement in the future. Every now and then, game studios reach out to us and say, hey, can you share that secret sauce of how to build the best performing playables? And my answer is, it's not so simple as it might sound. Unfortunately, I do not want to disappoint anyone, but there is no such a thing like a secret formula to build successful playables. What works for one company might not work for another. However, there are many techniques mobile gaming companies can implement in the processes in order to find the right playable ad strategy for each game. Requires some dedicated resources, first of all, and most important, it requires concept testing and optimization is the main requirement. Let me maybe do this. Anyway, production of the playable, if we talk about this, should be efficient and very effective. This is, in short, how I would describe an ideal creative development team workflow. At the end of each day, each studio has a limited amount of resources, and it's absolutely normal. Anybody you talk with, they say, hey, we have limited amount of resources, and I say it from experience. And they need to use these resources wisely because, again, at the end of the day, there is a short period of time dedicated to each creative. Ideally, having a team of professionals, including a creative manager or user acquisition manager, who is frontline to see what works and what not, and who is as well kind of understand your game hook. And marketing developer, it's very fancy, newly trend, or developer who knows how to build successful playable and does understand and does optimization based on the data they receive. Altogether, they basically make the process of building playables way smoother. That's a fact. And ultimately, of course, your team will have more control and responsibility for the final output, and will be able to literally experiment more with the content of its usage. So your team will have the opportunity to exercise their full potential. Eventually, empowered by Luna, a creative team will have more time to perfect their craft and what they are good at. And importantly, input performance proves this. Then we are looking at the big picture. It's pretty clear why companies are increasingly adopting creative production with Luna. And it's not just about the economic ROI or ROI. It does a lot to improve the workflow and literally maximize the efficiency. And not to forget to mention, it provides time for your team to get creative enough to ideate powerful messages and literally build successful playable ads. Going further, designing an effective playable ad is far more complicated and complex than simple shortening your game. The reality is that a ton of things needs to be done during the design and creation process. The most important thing is literally defining what the core gameplay moments is, so that it shows a faithful experiment and experience of the real game, and actually matching that with analysis of what experience your audience is most likely to be engaged by. It's also important to remember that you can showcase your game style, art, mechanics in your playable, and at the same time, you're fundamentally creating an experience that is meant to engage your potential users and literally drive them to the App Store. That's the main goal of any creative. And most importantly, it's easy to get caught. And it's actually easy to get caught up in trying to capture all the amazing qualities of your game. And trust me, your game is amazing, that you can end up forgetting about the purpose of your playable ad, which is make users to install the game. So to conclude this small part, our recommendation: simple. Design and build your experience as a playable ad, and not just a mini game or part of your game, like a one level or part of the level. Define playable flaw. It actually includes 4 simple stages, starting with intro. Intro is defined by many companies. It can be camera angle or choice of weapon, character, or objects. Tutorial, the most important part, because it allows you to identify those important points during important points of the game where user go through, and it will be extremely important to hook the user and explain them the core of the gameplay. Gameplay in itself, it's basically provides you the experience according to your goals, and if the main goal is to acquire users with a higher retention rate, I would recommend using actual gameplay, which is very important. And the last but not least, it's an end card, which usually drives user to the store. Basically, to maximize the performance of your playables, you need to be able to test them, analyze, to analyze their results and make their iterations. Although doing this for video creatives can be time-consuming, playables provide a greater flexibility for iterations because of their dynamic format. And also, don't forget, this particular creative format allows you to collect data. One useful way to build a playable based with different options, because this at the end can improve your chances of success, because you are then able to concept test quicker and react to the results in real time. And often, I would say very often, what you think will be your best performing concept will actually fail to meet all those expectations you set prior. But it's important not to let those results to set your team back. Instead, we always say, learn from it. If you think it's a mistake, it's not. You just learn from it and you continue moving forward and optimize and making something incredibly beautiful, but also performing. As a simple example, user might to react more positively to a certain character in your game or to a shorter or more challenging experience, but you won't be able to find out unless you concept test it and get the data you need by running analysis. That's what is the most important part of it. We typically think of video as a passive ad format, some sort of. Actually, it's experience that you can just sit back and enjoy without having an actual impact to the progression of the creatives. Playable ads, on the other hand, are the very active format. They're creative only progress based on user interaction because you literally make user to click, to make certain steps, to do actions. And this is a critical point to consider when designing your playables. To create the perfect playable experience, I would highly recommend to focus your time on the first screen and opening tutorial of your playable. Engagement rate is a king, and everybody knows it. And the best playable ads are the ones that attract user attention the most and the fastest. So you have first 5 seconds to make this interaction and get attention. When you deciding between optimizing startup time and overall ad size, I would say startup time should always take attention as it the greatest effect on the performance. And here is like a small 3 quick wins. Like edit finger animation, let the user know that the ad is interactive and consider some special facts, how to move and actually what to do. Challenging the user with a message detailing what you want them to do, basically give them objective, which is clear, and the user will do the first clip with fully understanding, okay, I have something to do here. And of course, using animation with a playable that draw attention to key items. Okay. Once you successfully hook the user into your ad, you will then need to convert their interaction in a meaningful App Store visit because, as we mentioned earlier, that's a goal. For any user acquisition team, for any creative team, when you build a playable, you want user, watch it, play it, go to store and install the game. For the creative to be as effective as possible, end card or exit point needs to clearly show when and how the user will be brought to the App Store. For instance, experimenting with a win and lose models will allow you actually to evaluate which type of user interaction leads to a higher conversion rates and better retention. Although it might feel limited to predefined paths, it can offer valuable insight for your next creative. One simple but very effective way to optimize your creative flow is by building templates for section of your playables, such a tutorial and the end card. So basically, at the end of the day, you want to lead your user to a place in which your creatives gives them a clear understanding of your game, and on top of the desire to learn or experiment more with it. And for user and for you, being able to do this and maintain this type of emotion will only get the user to visit the App Store page. Yeah, but here's like 3 simple examples we see pretty often. The fake second level in which any click will direct user to the App Store. Don't use it too much because users don't like it. Pick your next feature, which present the user with the option to choose their next level. Basically a pop-up button that you might see with hyper-casual games, which literally can say upgrade or rank up. When creating pick your next item and card, for example, you can select the template code for it and switch it to the assets relevant to your game. This is particularly useful for studios that produce playable on a weekly basis or hyper casual. By having those templates on standby, you can focus more on actual gameplay. Another technique that can optimize your workload is especially valuable during soft launch or rapid testing phase is the use of video asset. Instead of building a custom playable from scratch, you can actually reproduce a complex piece of game by adding layers like UI or emotions or animations or particle effect to a video recording. It will literally help. From what we witnessed doing this, this can make actually it creates feel of native as a playable, but one thing to keep in mind, although this allows you to build creative very quickly, it has its own limitations around user experience and, of course, sometimes performance. Okay, all right, so you've done the important task of getting the user to engage with your ad, but now you need to maintain their interest. One useful way to start is literally by doing the user with a different positive reinforcement and challenges, kind of give them a regular intervals. This makes sure the user knows what they need to do to progress, and it also keeps them engaged. For example, label A might have a tutorial and call to action which says tap to start. For worst case scenario in this situation, we see here is what nothing happens after the user tap, which actually results in a false positive engagement rate. Very specific though. An easy trick in those situations to prevent this by getting someone who's actually not familiar with playable you're creating is playtest the ad. This will actually help to reveal how an average user would interact with your ad. Remember, if you work with playables, you're so used to it, you know each technique. And for someone who who doesn't work in the industry, it will be something more revealing for you, the way its user interacts it. Yes, basically, the key thing about any creative asset is the data these creative sets generate. User acquisition managers or creative managers, or for example, BI team, it depends on each studio and their setup, should understand just happen with the creatives. The data can be in form of impression clicks, maybe user installed the app, then we are going to talk about retention. Or even ad revenue or LTV. There's so much to learn from this set of data that the key points will be possible finding the meaning of this data. At the end, control, measure, and understand your data will be the key parameters for further analysis. And in a nutshell, here's what we recommend. Get a dedicated team which will build performing. Get a dedicated team which will literally build performing playable ads. I would say don't just mimic gameplay. Drive users through their. It's a good way through their gameplay to the App Store. Give them an experience. That's the most important. Build with testing in mind, take advantages of flexibility of playables, collect data and use it wisely. Get user into the ad and keep them there. Don't underestimate the power of the tutorial. Consider win and lose modes. And of course, you should test them against each other because this will literally give you so many insight on your user base. Create templates and prefabs. It's more important if you want to work on projects more often. Engage with users with the first 5 seconds. Very important fact. Don't forget it. Implement all possible tutorial tricks and tweaks. Remove your biases and set clear goals and boundaries. Make your ad real approachable, easy and understandable. Make your user understand your his plan and ad, and they will enjoy the core mechanics. And of course, last but not least, if you found that works for you and your playable ads, try to automate and replicate it. All right. It seems like I almost did it in 20 minutes. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions. Feel free to reach out to Lena at lunalabs.io.
Hey, super. Thank you so much, Lena. Really, really interesting presentation, especially that not only, let's say, you guys being very creative, but you're being very creative about creatives as well, right? So, I mean, it's really interesting, let's say, what it is you guys are doing, especially, let's say, your point of looking, let's say, at the tutorials and always trying to, let's say, reiterate on those and make them, of course, better. Because, of course, the first-time user experience video experience is a big thing for us as well. So I think it's very interesting to see, let's say, look at, let's say, creatives or a playable ad, should I say, as something, let's say, interesting, to look at. We do have a couple of questions for you. So number one would be, how do you analyze performance of playable ads? Is it just conversion rates, or do you use other metrics?
Currently with Luna, we use endpoints, and we start usually with very simple metrics, which is engagement, impression, CTR. And currently we integrate it with Adjust, and it will allow us to optimize all playables based on installs. And of course, if any of our partners would like to proceed with further analysis, like adding, for example, their in-app purchases, or in this case, ad revenue to check, hey, is our users which we bought with this particular creatives generate enough revenue or ARPU to continue with this, or we should optimize it further.
Pretty interesting. Another one. What's your take on the IDFA depreciation impact on the future of playables? I'm sure.
I think this is like a great. Yeah, it's a very trending question. I think everybody was asked this, and everybody is looking for a miracle or simple solution. But there is no something in particular. But at Luna, we have very good strategy, and what we basically always put attention on is never forget, playables is trackable. It's the same as your game. You can literally, and I always say it, remember about patterns. Patterns are in everything. You can literally, by analyzing your playables, and we call it custom events in your playable, you can analyze the patterns for those users who install the app. And you can understand that if the scope of your users who install the app actually had the pattern of they complete the tutorial, they went through all the active actions in the playable, and they hit the button, which is green or red or blue, and you can always see that pattern. And never forget, patterns are everything. And you mentioned just right now, you said that you need to be creative with a creative. Actually, you need to read data in order to be creative.
That's very interesting. One last one for you as well. What would you consider key KPIs to keep an eye on when beginning to improve playable ads? eCPI, quality of users, improvement in campaign level, and so on?
It always depends on what is your goal and what your games are. Because if you're hyper casual, then of course your KPIs will be different. You want to lower eCPI. You want to get a bunch of users for lower price, because at the end of the day, with hyper casual, you have very short retention rate. While if we're talking about games where in-app purchase is a priority, it would be totally different approach.
Super. Lena, thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful to have your presentation.
Thank you. Have a great day.